When Caitlin Clark decided to publicly promote her teammate's signature shoe, she didn't just send a quick congratulatory message and move on. She went all in. She posted about it. She talked about it in interviews without being asked. She used her massive platform, the kind of platform that companies would literally pay millions to access, to push Sophie Cunningham's Adidas deal directly to her followers. And the internet absolutely lost its mind. Half the basketball world erupted in celebration, calling it the most authentic teammate moment the Wnba has ever seen. The other half went into full attack mode, claiming it was manufactured marketing, that Cunningham didn't deserve the shoe, and that Clark was only doing this because they were friends. But here's what nobody's talking about. This moment reveals something much bigger about how the Wnba is changing, who actually matters in this league right now, and why some players are thriving while others are getting left behind. By the time we're done, you're going to understand exactly why Clark made this move, why it matters so much, and why the people criticizing it are missing the entire point. Let's dive in. On July 24th, Adidas dropped something that wasn't supposed to be controversial. Sophie Cunningham, a role player for the Indiana Fever who averages around 9 points per game, was getting her own player-exclusive colorway of the Adidas Crazy Energy. The shoe retailed for $120. It featured a hot pink to white gradient with light blue mesh paneling and orange midsole accents. By design standards alone, it's sharp. It's confident. It matches Cunningham's energy on the court, loud, bold, and unapologetic. But the moment this release went live, something shifted. Caitlin Clark didn't treat this like a standard teammate milestone that gets a quiet nod of approval. She treated it like it was her own endorsement deal. She started promoting it everywhere. On her social media, in interviews she wasn't even being asked about. She told people to check it out when it dropped. She hyped up the design. She spoke about Cunningham with genuine excitement, not the polite, rehearsed tone athletes usually use when talking about their teammates' side projects. And that's when the internet split into two completely different camps. One side saw what Clark was doing and thought it was beautiful. Here's a superstar, they argued, using her platform to lift up someone else. Not competing with her, not gatekeeping her influence, just straight up supporting her. That's rare in professional sports. That's the kind of thing that rarely happens between two players this visible, this closely watched, and this prominent in the league. But the other side, they saw something completely different. They saw a marketing scheme. They saw favoritism disguised as friendship. They saw Clark artificially inflating the value of a shoe that in their minds had no business existing in the first place. Comments flooded in immediately. "What did she do to earn a shoe?" became the rallying cry. People pointed to her scoring average like it was some kind of definitive argument. "She averages 9 points. Why does she have a signature shoe?" The implication was clear. Cunningham didn't deserve this. She wasn't star enough. She wasn't skilled enough. She wasn't relevant enough without Clark's help. Some critics went even further. They claimed the whole thing was orchestrated by Adidas and the Fever's marketing team. They said it was a calculated move to capitalize on the Clark fandom, designed to move product by tricking people into buying something they wouldn't normally want. They suggested that no matter how hard Clark tried to push it, the shoe would ultimately fail because genuine interest wasn't there. It was all artificial. It was all manufactured. It was a cash grab wrapped up in the language of sisterhood and support. But here's what the critics weren't accounting for. The shoe itself is actually legitimately good. The design is sharp. It's distinctive. It tells you who Cunningham is as a player just by looking at it. And more importantly, Cunningham didn't come out of nowhere to get this deal. She didn't just wake up one day and get handed a signature shoe because she was friends with the biggest star in basketball. There's actually a whole story here that explains why Adidas even considered this in the first place, and why Clark's promotion of it isn't random favoritism. It's strategic support of someone who's actually earned something real. The noise online was deafening at first. Social media went into overdrive. Basketball Twitter divided itself into camps. Some athletes and their fan bases chimed in with thinly veiled criticism, using the same scoring average argument on repeat. The discourse became predictable almost immediately. It wasn't really about the shoe anymore. It was about something deeper. It was about players feeling like they deserved attention that Cunningham was getting. It was about the jealousy that comes when one teammate gets elevated in a way that other teammates don't. It was about the age-old resentment that bubbles up whenever something feels unfair in the professional world. But what nobody seemed to be asking was why Adidas even greenlit this deal in the first place. Shoe companies don't just hand out signature colorways to random role players out of the goodness of their hearts. There's always a calculation. There's always a business reason. And understanding that reason completely changes how you look at everything else that happened afterward. Clark's promotion wasn't her trying to artificially create demand where none existed. She was recognizing something that the critics were completely missing. She was seeing value that went beyond points per game. She was understanding that in 2024 and 2025, the metric that matters most isn't how many buckets you score in a game. It's how many people know who you are, how many people care about you, and how many people are willing to spend money on something with your name on it. And Sophie Cunningham had actually become genuinely relevant by those metrics. But that story doesn't get told when people are too busy arguing about scoring averages. To understand why Clark went so hard for Cunningham's shoe, you have to first understand what these two actually mean to each other. And it's not just some surface-level teammate thing where they smile in photos together and pretend to be close for the cameras. This is real. This is the kind of connection that gets forged in actual moments of crisis, not in manufactured publicity stunts. When Caitlin Clark entered the WNBA as a rookie, she came with a target on her back that very few players have ever experienced. The hype around her was unreal. Everyone was watching. Everyone wanted to see if she could actually deliver at this level. And with that attention came something else: physical punishment. From day one, Clark was getting hit. Hard fouls, dirty plays, elbows that seemed to come out of nowhere. And here's the thing that people don't like to talk about openly: the league took a while to actually protect her the way rookies with that kind of spotlight typically get protected. There were games where she was getting fouled in ways that should have drawn technicals, flagrant fouls, suspensions, but the whistle didn't always blow. The referees didn't always step in. The league didn't immediately put its foot down and say, "This is unacceptable. This star player is going to get hurt." While all of this was happening, Sophie Cunningham was there. She didn't sit back and let it happen. She didn't stay quiet and hope someone else would handle it. She actively intervened. Every time something happened to Clark, Cunningham showed up. No hesitation, no warning, just immediate, visible support. She had her back on the court in ways that go beyond normal teammate dynamics. She was making it clear to every other team in the league that if they came at Clark, they had to go through her too. That kind of loyalty creates something real. It's not manufactured. It's earned through actual moments of standing up for someone when standing up for them might cost you. That loyalty crystallized into something iconic on June 13, 2024, during a game against Phoenix. Dana Bonner fouled Clark hard, the kind of foul that looked deliberate, the kind that sent a message. Cunningham's response was immediate and unforgettable. She pointed at Bonner. Not a quick gesture and then walk away. She pointed for 22 consecutive seconds. Security eventually had to remove her from the court. That moment became viral. It spread beyond basketball. It reached wrestling fans, meme accounts, people who had never watched a WNBA game in their entire lives. It was raw. It was real. It was the kind of moment that can't be manufactured or staged because the emotion is too genuine. Clark has publicly stated multiple times that she will never forget that moment. She's talked about what it meant to her to have someone stand up for her like that on a national broadcast, in front of thousands of people, in a packed arena. That's the kind of thing that bonds people together. That's the kind of thing that makes someone willing to use their platform to help lift another person up. When Clark decided to promote Cunningham's shoe, she wasn't doing it because Adidas asked her to. She wasn't doing it because it was convenient or because it made her look good. She was doing it because she genuinely wanted to see her friend succeed. But there's more to the Cunningham story than just being Clark's protector. Before she ever became famous for defending Clark, Cunningham was already building something. She signed with Adidas back in 2022. She wore Adidas when she made appearances. She was quietly establishing a relationship with the brand for years, doing the unglamorous work that almost nobody notices. The interviews, the appearances, the networking, the brand building. She was doing all of that while averaging 9 points per game, while being a role player, while nobody was really paying attention. She was investing in herself in a way that most role players don't bother to do. Clark watched all of this happen. She saw the work. She saw the consistency. She saw Cunningham showing up to events, representing the brand, being professional, being personable. And when the opportunity came for Cunningham to get a signature shoe, Clark recognized it for what it actually was: validation of years of hard work that had finally paid off. That's why her promotion of the shoe felt so genuine. That's why she didn't just send a quick text message congratulating Cunningham. She went all in because she understood the entire journey, not just the final moment. The critics who say this is just favoritism between friends are missing the entire context. Yes, they're friends. Yes, Clark is helping promote the shoe. But the reason that promotion carries so much weight is because the friendship is real, and because Cunningham actually did put in the work to get to this point. Clark wasn't randomly elevating someone out of nowhere. She was supporting someone who had already earned her respect through actions, through loyalty, and through years of grinding that most people never saw. The people saying Sophie Cunningham doesn't deserve a signature shoe are making an argument that sounds logical on the surface, but completely falls apart when you actually examine it. Their whole case rests on one number: 9 points per game. That's it. That's the entirety of their evidence. She averages 9 points, therefore she doesn't deserve a shoe. But here's the problem with that logic. Shoe companies don't base their decisions primarily on points per game. That's not how modern endorsement deals work. If it were, then the only players with signature shoes would be the top scorers in the league. But that's not what we see happening. What actually drives shoe deals in 2024 is cultural relevance. It's brand recognition. It's how many people know who you are. It's how many people want to wear your name. It's searchability, social media presence, meme potential, viral moments. All of these things matter way more than scoring average. And when you look at Sophie Cunningham through that lens, suddenly the shoe deal makes perfect sense. At the end of 2024, Google released its year in search data. Do you know where Sophie Cunningham ranked among all athletes in the entire nation? 7th. 7th out of every single athlete across all sports. And here's the kicker: she was the only woman in the top 10 in terms of raw search volume. That ranking didn't happen because of her 9-point average. It happened because of that 22-second point at Dana Bonner. It happened because she became a meme. It happened because wrestling accounts shared her video. It happened because political opinion pages shared her video. It happened because she captured something in that moment that transcended basketball and entered the broader cultural conversation. That's the kind of reach that shoe companies base player exclusives on. That's the kind of cultural momentum that justifies a signature colorway. But the critics keep ignoring this. They act like it doesn't exist. They keep coming back to the same tired argument: she doesn't score enough points. Meanwhile, they're completely missing the actual metric that matters. Cunningham became one of the most searched athletes in America. She became a household name. She became someone that millions of people outside of basketball know about. And she did it authentically, through a moment that couldn't be manufactured or faked. That's infinitely more valuable to Adidas than another 2 or 3 points per game. Here's another thing the critics don't want to acknowledge. Cunningham isn't just some random role player coasting on Clark's success. She's actually becoming a star in her own right. Before the pointing incident, she was already building momentum. She was showing up everywhere. She was doing interviews. She was on podcasts. She was on news channels. She was maximizing her stardom in a way that most role players don't even attempt to do. She understood something that a lot of players miss. If you want to transcend your role, you have to work off the court as much as you work on it. You have to build your brand. You have to make yourself known. You have to create value beyond what you do in 20 minutes per game. The numbers back this up. Cunningham had the second highest jersey sales in the entire Wnba last season, right behind Clark. Second, that's not a coincidence. That's not something that happens when someone doesn't deserve attention. People literally wanted to buy her jersey. They wanted to wear her name on their back. That's a market signal. That's consumers voting with their wallets. That's the evidence that she actually does have commercial value, that people actually do care about her, and that a shoe deal isn't some crazy stretch. But here's where it gets really interesting. Some of the criticism actually reveals something that has nothing to do with Cunningham's merit and everything to do with jealousy. When you strip away the "she doesn't deserve it" arguments, what you're left with is players and their fan bases saying, "Why is she getting this attention and we're not?" That's the real complaint. It's not about Cunningham's scoring average. It's about other players feeling like they've been overlooked. It's about the resentment that builds when one player gets elevated in a way that other players don't. And some of the commentary veers into territory that's pretty uncomfortable if you actually listen to it. There are people out there saying things like, "It doesn't hurt to be hot and blonde," or, "If that's being white, blonde, and attractive, tough, that's what she looks like." Those aren't basketball arguments. Those aren't logical critiques of her abilities. Those are people being upset about something that has nothing to do with basketball at all. And that's when you realize that a lot of this backlash isn't really about whether she deserves a shoe. It's about something much deeper: insecurity, resentment, and the uncomfortable reality that in modern sports, personality and cultural reach matter as much as raw athletic performance. The shoe itself is also legitimately good, by the way. The design is sharp. The hot pink gradient, the light blue mesh, the orange accents, it all works together. It's distinctive. It tells you who Cunningham is as a player and as a person. Adidas didn't just slap her name on a generic shoe and call it a day. They actually put thought into the design. And that matters. That means when Clark promotes it, she's not promoting some low-effort cash grab. She's promoting something that actually has quality behind it, something that actually represents what Cunningham brings to the court. When Caitlin Clark decided to actively promote Sophie Cunningham's shoe, she was doing something that superstars almost never do. In professional sports, the biggest names typically stay in their own lane. They protect their brand. They maintain their endorsements separately from everyone else's. They compete even with their teammates. There's an understanding that your success is your success, and someone else's success is their success, and the two don't really intersect. That's especially true when you're talking about commercial opportunities and endorsement deals. Those are valuable. Those are things that athletes fight for. But Clark didn't do that. She deliberately breached that line in public, and she did it repeatedly, not just once. Not just in a quiet moment that nobody would notice. She brought it up on her own initiative in interviews. She posted about it on her platforms. She told people to support it when it dropped. She used her commercial weight, something that every company on the planet is currently trying to buy a piece of, to push someone else's product. That's not normal behavior for a superstar. That's not what LeBron does for his teammates' shoe deals. That's not what other superstars in basketball do for anyone. The reason this matters so much is because it reveals Clark's actual values. She's not just talking about being a good teammate. She's demonstrating it through action in a way that costs her something. Every time she promotes Cunningham's shoe instead of her own endorsements, she's directing attention and commercial potential away from herself and toward someone else. She's potentially leaving money on the table because someone else's marketing efforts might benefit from the attention that could have gone to her. That's a genuine sacrifice, and it comes from a place of actually caring about someone else's success. Most superstars would never do this. They'd worry about it. They'd think, if I promote my teammate's product too much, people might think less of mine. If I use my platform to sell someone else's shoes, I'm losing leverage with my own sponsors. If I overshadow my own endorsements by pushing hers, I'm making a bad business decision. And they might be right about some of that from a pure business standpoint, but Clark didn't let that calculus stop her. She decided that supporting her friend was more important than protecting her own commercial interests. That's actually remarkable when you think about it. The impact of this decision is hard to overstate. Clark has millions of followers. She has the biggest platform in the Wnba by a significant margin. When she tells people to buy Cunningham's shoe, a certain percentage of those followers are going to listen. They're going to go to the store. They're going to buy the shoe. That's not hype. That's not speculation. That's how influence works. And Adidas knows this. That's why they were probably thrilled when Clark started promoting the deal. That's why they're probably hoping the shoe sells out, because when it does, it validates their decision to give Cunningham a signature colorway in the first place. But Clark's promotion also sends a message beyond just moving product. It sends a message to Cunningham that she's valued, that her success matters, that her friend is willing to use her platform and her influence to help her win. In an industry where competition and self-interest are the default, that's a powerful statement. It says something about the kind of teammate and the kind of person Clark is. It also sends a message to the rest of the league. It says that if you're part of Clark's circle, if you have her back, she's going to have your back. That creates loyalty. That creates trust. That creates the kind of team chemistry that actually helps you win games. There's also a long-term strategic element to this that the critics aren't considering. By actively promoting Cunningham's shoe and helping make it successful, Clark is building goodwill. She's creating a situation where other players see what happens when they're genuinely supportive of their teammates. They see the positive attention. They see the celebration. They see that it's not a zero-sum game where one person's success takes away from another person's success. If more players started doing what Clark is doing, the entire culture of the Wnba would shift. The league would feel more cohesive. It would feel less competitive in a destructive way and more supportive in a constructive way. Clark is also implicitly endorsing Adidas's decision to invest in women's basketball through player exclusives like this. She's saying, "Yes, I think this is a good thing. I think you should keep doing this. I think you should keep investing in Wnba players." And when the biggest star in the league is actively supporting those investments, companies listen. They remember. They're more likely to do similar deals in the future. So Clark's promotion of Cunningham's shoe might not just help Cunningham. It might help multiple Wnba players down the line by showing companies that there's genuine, authentic demand for women's basketball endorsement deals. The Fever fan base has also become one of the most commercially aggressive in the league. They follow Clark's lead. If she tells them to support Cunningham, they will. That's not because they're mindlessly following orders. It's because Clark has built credibility with them. She's shown that she cares about the same things they care about. She's shown that she's not just a player playing basketball. She's actually part of a community, part of a team in the truest sense of the word. And when the biggest star in your community tells you to support something, you listen. Let's talk about the actual evidence that Sophie Cunningham deserves a signature shoe. Because the fact that this even needs to be argued is kind of wild. The scoring average argument is so weak that it barely deserves a response, but let's address it head-on. Shoe companies don't base these decisions on scoring average. If they did, Cunningham would never have gotten a deal. But they don't. They base these decisions on cultural relevance, marketability, personality, and reach. And when you look at those metrics, Cunningham actually has a really strong case. First, the search data. Google released its 2024 year in search rankings at the end of that year, and the results were shocking to anyone who thought this deal was undeserved. Sophie Cunningham came in at number 7 overall among all athletes in America, not number 7 in women's basketball, not number 7 in the Wnba, number 7 among all athletes, period. That includes male athletes, superstars, MVPs, Hall of Famers. She ranked higher than most of them. And she was the only woman in the top 10 in terms of raw search volume. That's not something that happens by accident. That's not something that you can create through marketing. That's organic cultural reach. That's millions of people typing her name into a search engine because they want to know who she is and what she's doing. The viral moment that created this surge didn't come out of nowhere. When Cunningham pointed at Dana Bonner for 22 seconds, she created something that transcended basketball. The video hit wrestling accounts. It hit meme accounts. It hit political accounts. It spread to people who had absolutely no interest in women's basketball before that moment. And suddenly, they were interested in who Sophie Cunningham was. They wanted to know her story. They started following her. They started caring about the Wnba in a way they never had before. That's the kind of cultural penetration that you literally cannot buy. You cannot manufacture it. You cannot create it through advertising campaigns or marketing teams. It has to be authentic, and Cunningham's moment was as authentic as it gets. Then there's the jersey sales data. The Indiana Fever released their jersey sales numbers, and Cunningham came in second. Second, behind only Caitlin Clark. She outsold every other player in the Wnba. That's not an opinion. That's not speculation. That's consumers voting with their wallets. People were so interested in Sophie Cunningham that they wanted to buy her jersey. They wanted to wear her name on their back. They wanted to represent her. That's hard evidence that she has commercial value, that people actually care about her, and that companies should be investing in her. Before the viral moment, Cunningham was already building momentum. She was strategic about her career in a way that most role players aren't. She was doing interviews. She was going on podcasts. She was appearing on news channels. She was everywhere, constantly making herself visible, constantly building her brand. She understood something that a lot of athletes miss. You don't have to be the leading scorer to become a star. You have to be visible. You have to be interesting. You have to give people a reason to care about you. And Cunningham did all of that work before she ever became famous. And let's talk about what Adidas actually chose to do. This isn't a cheap knockoff shoe. This isn't some generic design with her name slapped on the side. Adidas put legitimate thought into the design. The hot pink gradient, the light blue mesh, the orange accents, these choices were deliberate. They tell a story about who Cunningham is. The shoe looks good. It's sharp. It's confident. It's exactly what you'd expect if you know anything about Cunningham's personality and playing style. Adidas also specifically made this a player-exclusive colorway, which is significant because it means they're treating her like an established star, not like a one-off marketing experiment. This is also the first Wnba player exclusive that Adidas has released since Candace Parker. That's important context. Candace Parker is a legitimate superstar. She's a two-time MVP. She's a Hall of Famer. She's one of the best players in the history of the league. And Adidas gave her a signature shoe. Now they're giving one to Sophie Cunningham. The company is basically saying that Cunningham is in a tier of player that deserves this kind of investment and recognition. They're saying that her commercial value is genuine and substantial. They're saying that she's worth their time and resources. When you actually look at the data, Cunningham's case is way stronger than the critics want to admit. She's culturally relevant. She has organic reach. She has jersey sales that prove people care about her. She has strategic vision about her career and her brand. She's proven that she can be interesting beyond just basketball. She's shown that she can transcend her role on the court and become something bigger. That's the kind of thing that gets you a signature shoe. That's the kind of thing that makes you marketable. That's the kind of thing that makes companies want to invest in you. The scoring average argument falls apart when you realize that in modern sports, especially modern women's sports, the metric that matters most isn't points per game. It's whether people know who you are. It's whether people care about you. It's whether people want to buy your product. And by every single one of those metrics, Sophie Cunningham qualifies. She more than qualifies. She's actually become one of the most relevant athletes in the entire country. The shoe deal is just recognition of something that had already happened. It's validation of work that had already been done. It's not some crazy, undeserved handout. It's actually a logical business decision based on real data and real market signals. Here's the thing about the criticism that nobody wants to say out loud. Most of it has nothing to do with whether Cunningham deserves a shoe and everything to do with something much deeper. If you actually sit down and read through the comments, if you actually listen to what people are saying underneath the basketball arguments, you start to see a pattern. The scoring average argument is just a smokescreen. It's the socially acceptable way to express something that's actually much messier and more complicated. Some of the frustration is legitimate professional jealousy. There are players in the WNBA who have been grinding for years, who have bigger roles, higher scoring averages, more impressive resumes on paper, and they've never gotten a signature shoe deal. They've never gotten the kind of attention that Cunningham is getting, and that's frustrating. Imagine being a player who's been working just as hard, who's put in just as much effort, who's maybe even been more productive on the court, and then watching someone else get elevated in a way that you never have. That would sting. That would feel unfair. That's where some of the anger is coming from, and that's actually understandable, even if it's not entirely justified. But there's another layer to this that's less comfortable to talk about. Some of the criticism has notes of something that goes beyond basketball entirely. There are comments about Cunningham being blonde, about her being attractive, about how it doesn't hurt to look a certain way. These aren't basketball arguments. These are observations about her appearance, and they're being used to dismiss her accomplishments. The implication is that she's only getting this attention because of how she looks, not because of what she does or who she is. That's a form of dismissal that women in sports deal with constantly, and it's worth recognizing when it's happening. Some of the anger is also coming from a place of insecurity about what this moment represents. The fact that someone like Sophie Cunningham, a role player, a supporting cast member, someone who's not one of the league's biggest scorers, can become this relevant this quickly through a moment that went viral is threatening to some people. It suggests that the old hierarchy, the old metrics for who matters and who doesn't, might not be as solid as everyone thought. It suggests that in a world of social media and viral moments and internet culture, the traditional markers of success don't always determine who gets to be famous. That's unsettling. That disrupts the way people understand how sports work. There's also a gender dynamic here that's worth unpacking. When men in professional sports have signature shoes, nobody questions whether they deserve them. Nobody asks what they did to earn the right to have their name on a product. It's just accepted as part of how the system works. But with women, especially with a woman like Cunningham, who isn't one of the established superstars, suddenly these questions come up. Suddenly people need to justify her worthiness. Suddenly she has to prove that she deserves this opportunity. That's a double standard, and it's one that women in sports navigate constantly. Men get the benefit of the doubt. Women have to prove their case. The fact that Caitlin Clark is actively promoting Cunningham's shoe seems to make some people even angrier. There's something about seeing the biggest star in the league publicly lifting up someone else that bothers certain people. Maybe it's because it complicates the narrative they want to have. If Clark is promoting Cunningham, then Clark is endorsing her value, which means people can't just dismiss Cunningham as undeserving. Clark's promotion forces people to reckon with the possibility that maybe Cunningham actually does matter, actually is relevant, actually has earned this. Some of the criticism also comes from people who feel like the WNBA is moving in a direction they don't like. The league is becoming more visible. More players are getting signature deals. More brands are investing. More people who aren't traditional basketball fans are paying attention. And for some people, that's threatening. They preferred it when women's basketball was a niche thing, when only the real basketball fans paid attention, when the metrics were straightforward and simple. Now the league is more complicated. Now cultural relevance matters as much as scoring average. Now a role player can become famous through a viral moment. That's disorienting for people who wanted things to stay the way they were. At the core of a lot of this anger is the simple fact that people hate change. They hate it when the system doesn't work the way they expected it to. They hate it when someone succeeds by a different metric than the one they're comfortable with. They hate it when the old rules don't seem to apply anymore. And they especially hate it when someone at the top of the hierarchy, someone like Caitlin Clark, validates that change by actively supporting it. Because when Clark promotes Cunningham's shoe, she's not just helping Cunningham. She's endorsing a new way of thinking about success in women's basketball. She's saying that personality matters, that reach matters, that cultural relevance matters, that being interesting matters. And for people who preferred the old system, that's a hard pill to swallow. The reality is that most of the criticism has very little to do with Cunningham's actual merit, and everything to do with what her success represents. She's become a symbol of a changing WNBA, a changing landscape where the traditional rules don't always apply, where superstars can lift up their peers, where role players can become culturally relevant, where the metrics for success are expanding beyond what they used to be. And that's threatening to people who preferred things the way they were. So they attack. They use statistics. They use arguments about scoring average. They use all the tools at their disposal to try to prove that Cunningham doesn't deserve this. But underneath all of that, they're really just fighting against change. If you've been paying attention to Sophie Cunningham over the past year, you know exactly how she's going to respond to all of this criticism. She's going to let it fuel her. She's going to use it as motivation. She's going to take all of those comments saying she doesn't deserve this, all of those people betting against her, all of that noise, and she's going to channel it into her game and her career. Because that's who she is. That's what she's been doing all along. That's how she's gotten to this point. Throughout the 2024 season, Cunningham has shown a remarkable ability to respond to doubt with action. Every time someone has counted her out, every time someone has suggested that she's just a role player who got lucky, every time someone has tried to minimize her contributions, she's responded by showing up bigger the next game. She's responded by being more vocal in the locker room. She's responded by playing harder on defense. She's responded by making her presence felt in ways that don't always show up in the box score. And now she has a signature shoe. And now the entire world is watching to see if it succeeds or fails. And now she has a specific moment to point to, just like she pointed at Dana Bonner when people doubted her. When the numbers come in on July 24th, when the release happens, when the orders start flooding in, Cunningham will know exactly who was wrong. She'll know exactly which people bet against her. She'll know exactly which people said it wouldn't work, that nobody would buy it, that it was all manufactured hype and fake marketing. The shoe is probably going to sell well. It's probably going to move significant numbers. The Fever fan base is committed. The Clark fan base is committed. People who became fans of Cunningham because of that viral moment are committed. And that core group of supporters is going to be enough to make this deal a success. They're going to show up on July 24th. They're going to buy the shoe. They're going to wear it. They're going to post photos of it on social media. They're going to create buzz. They're going to validate Clark's decision to promote it. And when that happens, when the numbers start coming in and people see that the shoe is actually selling, Cunningham is going to have the perfect moment to make her point. She's not going to have to say anything. She's just going to do what she's been doing all along. She's going to point. Maybe not at a specific person, but at the people who doubted her, the people who said she didn't deserve this, the people who claimed it wouldn't work. She's going to let the numbers do the talking. She's going to let the success of the shoe be her response. That's the thing about Cunningham that her critics don't understand. She doesn't need to engage in the discourse. She doesn't need to defend herself. She doesn't need to prove anything to people on the internet. She just needs to keep doing what she's been doing, showing up, working hard, being interesting, being relevant, being the kind of player that her teammates want to have on their side. The shoe will sell or it won't. That's not really in her control. But she can control how she responds, and based on everything she's shown us, her response is going to be to let her actions speak. In the broader context of her career, this shoe is actually a huge validation moment. It's Adidas saying that they believe in her long-term. It's the company putting resources into her, making a bet on her, trusting that she's going to continue to be relevant and marketable. That's not a small thing. That's the kind of validation that can change how you see yourself and how you approach your career. Cunningham is probably going to use this as motivation to become even better, even more visible, even more important to her team. The spotlight is going to intensify, though. She's going to have more eyes on her. More people are going to be watching what she does. More people are going to care about her performance, and that's both an opportunity and a burden. But based on everything we know about Cunningham, she thrives under pressure. She rises to the occasion. She uses attention as fuel, so the increased scrutiny is probably not going to bother her. It's probably going to motivate her. The narrative around this shoe is also going to shift once it actually drops and people can see it for themselves. Right now, a lot of the criticism is abstract. People are arguing about whether she deserves it without actually seeing the product or really thinking about what it represents. But once the shoe is out in the world, once people can hold it, once they can see the design, once they can understand the story behind it, some of that criticism is going to soften. People are going to realize that it's actually a good shoe. They're going to realize that it makes sense. They're going to realize that maybe the decision to give Cunningham a signature colorway wasn't as crazy as they initially thought. And Cunningham is just going to keep being Cunningham. She's going to play hard. She's going to defend her teammates. She's going to have her teammates' backs. She's going to be the kind of player that people want to play with. She's going to keep building her brand off the court. She's going to keep making herself visible and interesting and relevant. And the shoe. The shoe is just one moment in a much larger story of a role player who figured out how to transcend her role and become something bigger. That's the story that's actually worth telling, and that's the story that time is going to validate. What happened with Caitlin Clark promoting Sophie Cunningham's shoe isn't just a story about two teammates supporting each other. It's actually a much bigger moment for women's basketball as a whole, and it's worth understanding why. This is about how the WNBA is evolving, how brands